Welcome to F1 Fathers First, and this is the fitness trackers module. Alright, so fitness trackers, what are they good for? Whatever gets measured gets managed, meaning if, say, take it to another realm, if I have a checking account and I don't track how much money goes in and how much money goes out, the chances are I'm going to retire late. Okay, you're going to be a much better money manager if you are actually tracking money in and money going out. You'll have a better, you'll get a more desired outcome. Same thing with fitness. Trackers measure your effort, measure your overall improvement. Trackers help measure your intensity. Okay, if you notice, intensity and effort are two different things, and measures the effectiveness of recovery and your diet. Okay, your recovery program, if there is one, and your diet should help support your athletic performance. Chances are one of these need to be tweaked if all of these check out. If you're at appropriate intensities, if you're improving, or if you're not improving, then you can look towards something like sleep, diet, and recovery. Okay, and most of all, it provides data. It doesn't always give us answers, but it gives us data as to what's going on. It's measuring your training program. What am I looking for with a fitness tracker? I'm looking for a tracker that can track activity, overall steps, and non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That's our activity in non-formal exercise. Measures the intensity of formal exercise. And a lot of sleep trackers will measure sleep and factor it in because sleep has a lot to do with your recovery. Why use trackers at all? Why not just go with your gut, or just not use trackers and follow, traditional strength training programs? The problem with following your gut is that we all have a neurological inhibition to fatigue. Okay, all human beings have this, and let's break that down into layman's terms. Neurological, okay, your mind, your brain. Inhibition, meaning to pull back or have a block. To fatigue. In a lot of exercise trials where people were asked to exercise to failure, we found that there was an ability still left to contract a muscle beyond the person's perceived control of that muscle, meaning we will generally have some sort of governor belt when it comes to reserving a little bit of energy in our body and not allowing ourselves to go completely all out. So when you hear terms like overtraining, it's very unlikely that somebody is actually overtraining. It's more like they are under recovering from their program. So if somebody is getting symptoms of overtraining, just because the brain and the nervous system tend to bring on the sense of fatigue before actual failure happens in a muscle, it's kind of like a safety mechanism in the body. Chances are we're not going to complete failure like we think we are. And that's okay, but sometimes, depending on the person, we have different pain thresholds. Everyone has a different pain threshold. Some people can tolerate more or less. Some people have more of a inhibition to fatigue, meaning they'll reserve or pull back and not allow themselves to go all out. This gives us an objective look to what your effort actually is. And in any training program, no matter what the plan says on paper, under training equals poor results, like we mentioned in the first video here. Under recovering can also mean poor results. So under training, not training enough or not training hard enough, not taking the appropriate recovery methods or measures can lead to poor results. Trackers also give us a look at history. So say you've become very successful in your training program. You lost a lot of weight or you gained a lot of strength. It allows you to look back at everything that you've done and the trend lines to basically replicate that success. Or if you're not having good success, you can also look at the history and see what went wrong over time. And helps to determine best practices. When fitness goes wrong. Common training mistakes. Under training means not enough stress on the body, and you get no results. That's the symptom of undertraining. Adding too much intensity to a program. So when you're left to your own vices and you're the one creating a training program, or somebody is creating a training program for you online, maybe they don't have the numbers dialed in right just for you. Maybe there's too much intensity based on a lot of different factors like stress, diet. A lot of things could be going wrong in other areas of your life and not filtering into into your training program. There might just be too much intensity, and the result of a training program with too much intensity is that intensity of exercise isn't balanced by recovery, in short, and symptoms of too much intensity means that the body could get achy, tired, you could become moody or sluggish. So if you're feeling any of those things and you're exercising a lot, chances are there's too much intensity or not enough recovery. Basically, that balance is off. Not enough recovery in general, say the intensity is fine but not enough recovery, that can mean poor diet, lack of sleep, too much unnatural stress, meaning too much emotional stress, not enough physical stress. You could just have diminishing results over time. Basically, those kind of training programs, not enough recovery, can have good results in the beginning and then trail off like my arrow here. To see that graphically, programs with little tracking generally have good results in the beginning because just about anyone can follow any exercise program early if you're just beginning and see good results, but eventually plateau, and this could happen after months or years. Also, programs with little tracking, you can see the yo-yo effect. Yo-yoing up and down. So how many training programs or how many people do you know yo-yo? Okay, because they don't have the information available to figure out why they were successful the first time, or if they're not tracking and looking at certain measurements, like some that we'll go over here in a little bit, which is HRV. They could be overstressing or understressing their bodies and either emotionally fall off a cliff and decide that or become less motivated, or their body begins to break down and they need time to recover. Okay, I know many motivated, well-intentioned people that go through this process because they simply do not track objectively the inputs of their training program. Programs tracked properly generally get good results for a very, very long time. And if you notice, there are still plateaus built into here because no one can realistically expect to consistently get results in this kind of fashion, but you never actually lose any fitness level here. There's no yo-yoing going on. Okay, everyone will experience a point where maybe the results aren't as drastic, but consistently over time, constantly improving. So some of the things that I'm looking for in our activity tracking with steps and non-exercise activity thermogenesis is 5 to 10,000 steps per day. And the trackers that track this give you that pedometer reading, and then can also have a breath pacer or reminder. So a cool little some of these trackers have cool little breath pacers, meaning if your heart rate becomes too high or it detects that you're getting stressed, it can remind you to take long deep breaths and bring your stress levels back down to normal. They also track intensity. So let's talk about intensity for a minute. So intensity isn't just how much you sweat or how hard you're breathing. It depends on what we're talking about. And so a weightlifting program, you're going to have to calculate intensity of that training program a little differently than a conditioning program. Okay, so we calculate the intensity of a weightlifting program. So say like a bench press is weightlifted based off percentage max. So it requires you to know your percentage max first. So to make math easy, if my bench press is 200 pounds and I am asking you to do a bench press at 75% intensity, that would be a 150 pound bench press. Okay, so you can determine how intense that workout was based on your percentage relative to your max. Okay, it does require you to test, and that actually goes for any kind of weightlifting exercise. Could be a bench, a deadlift, a squat. Anything that requires strength, you learn what your max effort is, and then the weight lifted in relation to that is the actual intensity of that lift. The conditioning is what you see more often where people are wearing heart rate monitors. That's the conditioning is based off your heart rate, based off of percentage max heart rate. And max heart rate as a general guideline is 220 minus your age. Okay, so if I have 220 minus my age and I am 20 years old, that means my max training heart rate is 200. And if I am, say, at 150 beats per minute, I am exercising at relatively basically 75% intensity on my heart rate. Okay, so conditioning and weightlifting are measured in two different ways, and trackers help us do that. Fitness trackers do not track weightlifting very well. That's done much better with a notebook or an Excel spreadsheet. Fitness trackers also track sleep. Some trackers track sleep and sleep quality very well, meaning not just total hours of sleep, that would be your total sleep. Sleep quality is deep sleep. How many hours or minutes are you in a REM state sleep, so a very regenerative sleep, and we will talk more about REM sleep in the sleep module, but good sleep trackers will track both of those. However, most trackers do not factor it into the activity tracking. Okay, so some more sophisticated trackers will factor your sleep into a recovery score, and others do not. They just simply give you the data. Not one better than the other, just some cost more and are more sophisticated in nature. So let's look at some actual fitness trackers right now. All right, so that wraps up this portion of fitness trackers. Now I'm going to compare 4 different fitness trackers that I've used and some of the pros and cons between them. Hey challengers, welcome to the Fitness Trackers webinar. Right now I'm going to go over 4 primary fitness trackers that I use or have used in the past, the pros and cons of each one and how they should be used. I'm sure you can use a lot of different fitness trackers. A lot of them are very similar in today's technology age. Usually you're going to find a fitness tracker that has one different feature than another, but collectively these 4 share at least the most common traits of fitness trackers and different qualities of each one. So hopefully you get something out of this. Maybe it confirms a tracker that you've been using, or maybe it changes your mind to try something different. Very important note before we actually go into each individual one is that fitness trackers should be used as a way to track trends over time, not just dictate your day. I know that I've worked with a bunch of people who have used various types, and one thing that kind of gets lost in the shuffle as you're using them is just to get really fascinated with the technology itself or the piece of equipment. Maybe we put too much emphasis on what it's telling us that day and not enough what it's telling us over time. If you are, for instance, shooting for an average of 10,000 steps a day and you're using a pedometer, and over time you begin to feel worse. You're beginning to get pain in the hips, pain in the back, maybe something isn't going right in your training, or maybe you're not losing enough body fat. Well, maybe you weren't tracking the right information. Maybe that piece of equipment wasn't the right tracker for that goal. Now it might be, but you should be able to see a result over time, at least a positive one, in the direction you want to go using that tracker. So these are a couple different types of trackers and how I use them. All right, number 1 is wrist worn. Here I have an Apple Watch. I also consider shoe worn, maybe pedometers. I have an Apple Watch here, but you could consider this a Fitbit or anything that you wear on your watch, your wrist as in place of a watch. So the Apple Watch does a great job of tracking activity overall, and a lot of wrist-based trackers do. So it counts steps, motion. I know the Apple Watch specifically, I can speak for this, it reminds me when to stand up. If I've been sitting too long doing webinars or working on the computer. It also tells me when my heart rate is getting a little too high and I need to take deep breaths. I think that's a great stress management tool. It also does a little workout monitoring for me, so it allows me to track how long I worked out and an estimation of calorie burn. And then it also gives me a step goal for the day. So it tracks overall activity throughout the day. It tracks exercise, especially the Apple Watch detecting when you're standing up, when you need to stand up, and maybe when you need to breathe and release some stress. Okay, so great overall activity tracker here. Another great fitness tracker is your Polar heart rate monitors. There's a couple different kinds. I use the H7, which is a Bluetooth tracker. It's also a chest strap, which goes around just like so. Okay, straps to your chest right underneath the nipple line on the breastbone. Great thing about this is that it's waterproof. You can wear it in the water. It's also, here's your tracker. Here it's also separatable. You can take it off, you can wash the chest strap by itself. You can also test your resting heart rate, which is a great gauge of your overall cardiovascular health. The reference range is right here. And then you can also track your heart rates and your various heart rate zones throughout workouts. So there's different zones for high intensity training, there's different zones you should be for cardiovascular training. It also stores that information online and then in your app so you can backtrack and take a look at your improvement over time. As far as heart rate zones, what it doesn't do is it doesn't track your overall amount of steps in a day. So overall activity tracker does not do it. Does a decent job of estimating the amount of calories burned in a workout, but then it also does not track sleep, and it also does not track the quality of movement in your workout. So heart rate is one aspect we can look at our improvement as far as overall fitness. It does not track your strength gains, and it doesn't track your overall quality of movement. So not necessarily great for pain management, but great to monitor intensities. MyZone. MyZone is in my opinion, a little bit of an upgraded version of the Polar system that I just mentioned. Right here we have a chest strap very similar to Polar. We have a separate nodule and it's also chargeable for intensity tracking. It tracks your heart rate just like the Polar app does. It also stores your data, so you do not actually have to have your phone with you while you work out, so it can store up to, I believe, 3.5 hours of data. So as you work out, you don't have to have your phone near you, but when you do have your phone near you, you can link the two together and it can upload any information that was stored during your workout, and you can actually track that. And one of the biggest benefits to MyZone is the community aspect and the competitive aspect of it. So as you graduate and throughout your workout into higher heart rate zones, this starts increasing the amount of points that it issues you for that particular workout. It actually scores the effectiveness of that workout. So it actually rewards you for more effort. Okay, the downside to that is that it does not use HRV technology, heart rate variability, which you have an ebook right here waiting for you on heart rate variability, what it means and how to use it. But that's basically training readiness. It does not give you a score or offer any advice on how prepared you are to take on intense training. Now, it gives you a reward for intense training, but say you're low on sleep, maybe diet wasn't so hot because you traveled or whatever it is. If you're not prepared for training, or say you have too many intense days in a row and you need a day of rest or a day of low intensity training, it does not necessarily reward you for making that good decision. Okay, so a lot of people do need to put in more effort in their workouts, so it's great for that. It also shows your workout to all of your friends on this Facebook style feed inside of the app, so they can like and comment on your workouts. And you can also challenge your friends to month-long competitions or week-long competition on MEPS, or those MyZone effort points that rewards you for a workout. So it's excellent for competitiveness. I'm a competitor. I love that kind of stuff. But again, the training readiness would be a great addition to this. You can fall into the pit of overtraining or burnout if you abuse this power. And the fourth fitness tracker on the list is Morpheus. This is the one that I currently use. It does a lot of great things. Now, before I start on this, you can also compare it to the Whoop Band. I would say that's the closest competitor. They both do a few different things, but I haven't used the Whoop Band, so I can't comment on it. But Morpheus does a lot of great things. Number one, it has a lot of the great components of the other fitness trackers, meaning it monitors your heart rate. It gives you your resting heart rate, it tracks the amount of steps you have in a day, and it's a sleep tracker. Now, you're going to have to use other sleep trackers themselves, like the Apple Watch or the iPhone, to track your sleep, or if you have another piece of equipment, you can track your sleep, or you can manually use a slider inside of the app for Morpheus to offer the input and tell it how much sleep you got in a given day. It just won't monitor the quality of it. Okay, so it does factor in sleep. It factors in the amount of rest that you've had, but also gives you that HRV score that I was mentioning was missing from some of the other trackers. So the heart rate variability score is an assessment you take early in the morning. You strap this optical sensor to either your forearm or your leg. I hear they're working on chest straps themselves, so those might be out by the time you get to this video. But you get to take an HRV style reading early in the morning, and it gives you a training readiness score. If 100% was fully ready to go and 0% was dead, it gives you a percentage readiness score and lets you know how prepared your body is for intensity that day. And probably the coolest feature in the entire system, which other apps lack, is the real-time coaching. In a actual workout, Morpheus will guide you through your heart rate zones and tell you when you are overloaded or when you are in a prime conditioning zone. So the only downside to this, in my opinion, it is not waterproof. It's a little bulky to wear during high intensity exercise, meaning like on your leg and on your forearm. It kind of gets in the way of exercise for me as far as slinging kettlebells around, barbells. It's easy to run with. It's easy to do general conditioning like Concept 2 rowing, biking, walking, running, but it's not necessarily awesome for high intensity exercise. I strap it on my leg inside of my calf, and it works fine for me, but I have had a few issues with it. Okay, so I hear they're coming out with a chest strap to solve that problem. Again, if they have it out by then, at the bottom of this video there'll be a link if you'd like to get that. And one last piece of advice with fitness trackers is my original advice. Don't let them become your program. Don't get so obsessed with the data that you're starting to make decisions based on the tracker itself. I gave you a kettlebell program to follow. This is a program that has worked for a lot of people. These trackers help you monitor the intensities and help you decide whether or not the intensities that you're using, meaning the loads, the rest times, the amount of volume you're doing, is right for you. Maybe you have to change the volumes, maybe you have to change the weights a little bit, but it lets you know, these let you know your progress over time and whether or not you're improving from the inside, okay, not just from the outside. So that's my take on 4 different fitness trackers. I'd love to hear your feedback, and on to the